don't believe me, just watch.
See here. All right, we're back with Bob Turner Wood, and we're going through his book here. This is excellent, and I am looking for family members from Albuquerque because yes, they are from here, and it's in the. He's got a great index in the back of his brand new book. It's the post-war transformation of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and how the city changed. And I was looking in the back, and there's some familiar names back there, not just the names we know like Pete Domenici, but there's family names that may be my grandfather. How did you start doing this book, and how did you end up getting to this book?
Well, I came from Tennessee. I've been teaching at the branch of the University of Tennessee. Came here to do graduate work in American Studies, and at first the whole place seemed so different from where I was used to. But after a couple of years, I really fell in love with the place. And
how long have you been here?
I came here in 1969. I haven't been here all the time since then, but after a while, I became fascinated with everything about the city.
What about it? I mean, I know it's an interesting city because I'm from here, but what is it for you, for an outsider coming into New Mexico in the middle of the late '60s, trying to find out and find your place here?
Oh yes, well, it seemed like a place where anything was possible. There were a lot of dreamers out here, a lot of people who had tried new things. And it seemed to have a tremendous vitality. It was a time during the period that I wrote about, the city grew by about fivefold, and the average income doubled. And
from 1945 to 1972.
That is right. And I was just trying to find out how it moved from one city with one kind of personality to something much bigger and rather different. And so I worked on it for about 7 years. This was my PhD dissertation.
Oh, that's very cool.
A lot of the dissertations are not too exciting, but this was one that I was just obsessed with during this whole period.
Very cool. We were talking about art and the history of art. Do you mention, and the guys from the museum over here brought in, you were talking about some of the art history in Albuquerque. Do you mention some of that in the book too?
Yes, I do.
How much of a part did the art play in the city?
It was an increasingly important part of the city. During the time that I was writing about, people became more interested in visual art and music and other things that weren't really of practical use, but people had more time and more interest in this sort of thing.
Absolutely. So why'd you pick 1945 to 1972 to write about? What is it really about that time, that immediate post-war world of New Mexico, of Albuquerque?
Well, the two things. One is that this was a lot of my lifetime. I was born in 1942, and so I was trying to...
You saw it?
Yes, I was trying to find out how the city and the country as a whole changed and what made things tick. Another thing, though, about particularly Albuquerque is that this was a time when it grew fantastically. It was the fastest growing city in the country for part of this time. As I mentioned, the population increased, fivefold.
I think a lot of us think of that because of Sandia, because of Kirtland. Was that a major factor?
It was. It was a major factor.
That wasn't the only major factor, though?
By no means.
What were some of the other things that caused the city to just explode in population?
Well, I think a lot of big western cities like El Paso and Phoenix were also growing very rapidly. After World War II, the country started to boom, and it was a very dynamic time. The city changed much quicker during that period than it did later. From 1972 to the present, it's maybe doubled in population.
Right.
And the average income corrected for inflation has only gone up about 6%. Whereas it doubled during this period.
Doubled, that's amazing. In just 35 years, 36 years that you wrote about.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
What do you think is one of the turning points in the city? Was it simply just that the war ended and people came home, or was there a specific event that made the city grow?
Well, there were several important turning points. One was in 1945, the city was basically run by strong, colorful personalities like Clyde Tingley,
Absolutely,
and Dennis Senator Dennis Chavez.
Right.
In 1954, though, partly because of the new people who came in to Sandia, the engineers, there was a city election in which the Tingley people lost their control of the city.
Right.
The Albuquerque Citizens Committee, which was a very rational, disciplined group, took over. That was one important change.
And were they pro-growth?
Yes, they were pro-growth, but they were very pro running the city in a rational, disciplined fashion, which did not quite fit the old way.
And what was the old way? I mean, it didn't. I never heard anybody say that Clyde Tingley was undisciplined or unrational. I know him, as the guy who was friends with the president at the time, and the guy who helped build Tingley Beach, launched the hospital, all of that. I mean, what was the different philosophy?
Well, he was a very strong personality. He was a builder. He was
a construction guy originally, right?
Well, actually, he did a number of different things. In fact, a lot of the people then had very varied, rough and tumble pasts, and very, very strong personalities. They weren't necessarily good at working together. As the time went on, there was more and more emphasis on people working cooperatively in groups, and so there was an evolution from the strong person who made decisions on his own to the people who worked
took over later.
Yeah, took over later and became more committee-oriented, more group-oriented, and were probably able to use a lot more people's input rather than one person calling all the shots.
Is there something that you look at when you were doing this, that you're able to look at Albuquerque today and say that really, without maybe Sandia, without maybe the city government the way it is, without something, Albuquerque wouldn't be the city it is? Is there something in particular that you can say that today survives because of what happened in the 1940s or 1950s?
Well, I think that what made Albuquerque unique was the fact that it did grow so fast, and that the income rose so rapidly.
Right.
Without particular events like the takeover by the Albuquerque Citizens Committee in 1954, or Pete Domenici's running the city commission.
Right. Was it 72 then that the city went to the mayoral process rather than the city commission process?
It was right after that.
Right after
that. Now there were also some at the end of the 60s and the early 70s, there was a lot of disorder. There were the riots in Roosevelt Park in 1971.
That's right.
Before that,
and the riots at UNM later.
Yeah, well, actually, they came at UNM. The National Guard was called on campus in 1970 in the wake of the Kent State problems, and before that, in 1969, there was a poetry incident where Lenore Candel's poem "Love Lust," her Love Lust poem,
made an impact.
Made an impact. People in the state legislature who hadn't read a poem in years passed that poem around, and they were very
Is that
shocked.
the book?
Yeah, it is in the book.
Great. How long did it take you to write this?
I spent about 7 years working.
That's 7 years working. You just got your PhD because of this.
Well, yes.
That's excellent. Well, we're going to be back. We'll talk more about the history of Albuquerque, some more of the history of art, and I think Dave is going to try to maybe burn our taste buds off with some more of these hot foods in just a second on The Morning Brew with Friends.